wait for Uma to come, no? Then. She's gone to pick up. Okay, so another 2 minutes or just one? All right, I'll do that. Hello, good morning and welcome everyone. We're just waiting for a couple of our guests to come in and we shall start soon. A very warm welcome. Uh, I can start with a couple of announcements quickly before our guest comes in. Uh, so this is a large campus, as you would have noticed by now. Those of us who have, disability needs, need support, and want to use restrooms, there are a couple of restrooms at the back of this, near the greenhouse, and you can use that. Water counters are outside at 2-3 places. Each of our buildings on the ground floor have restrooms, right? So you could access that. You'll just have to look out for this colorful mural seminar hall and come back here, right? So that's just a broad layout of this, and yeah. So we'll just wait for a couple of minutes, and then we shall start our formal event. Thank you. Rishi, we'll check. No. Yeah. There. Please. we shall start. All right. Good morning and welcome once again to all of you who are here, traveled through the Bangalore traffic and managed to reach here. So very warm welcome. Welcome to all our virtual participants. We have a large group already joined in there. So welcome to all of you to Azim Premji University and this very special event for the launch of the Early Learner Assessment Tool. We shall not wait much. I will now invite Indu Prasad, our Vice Chancellor, for the opening address. Indu, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning. And it's wonderful to see all of you. We're always happy to see a full auditorium. And that's really nice. Like Kinnari said, thank you, all of you, for making it all the way across Bangalore's traffic to the campus. So for those of you who are coming to the campus for the first time, extra welcome. Very, very nice to have you here. We have teachers from schools and colleges. We have school principals. We have members of non-government organizations working in early childhood. We have students, and we have representatives from the Karnataka government, people who have spent a very, very long time working in early childhood. So a very, very warm welcome to all of you from the university and to this particular program. This is a very good time for early childhood education, I think, in our country. There are people here who have been working for many, many years in this area, who have contributed hugely to early childhood education in the country. But it's for the first time that, after a very long time, I think, that early childhood education has received the kind of attention that it is currently receiving. Through the National Education Policy, where ECE has been marked out as a very, very important part of school education and critical to the country's development and progress. So the NEP 2020 was wonderful because of its commitment to early childhood education. Post the NEP 2020, we had the National Curriculum Framework for the foundational stage, which was released around November. And the entire focus was on early childhood education, children from the ages of 3 to 8. And for me personally, since I have worked a lot with young children, it was really wonderful to see. So it's a good time. It's a very good time for early childhood education, I think. And the next 15, 20 years will be very, very important for us, all of us who are working in the area. As many of you know, Azim Premji University is an integral part of Azim Premji Foundation. And we began our work in early childhood education many, many years ago. And we began in Telangana, in one district in Telangana. And now our work in early childhood education has spread across the country, across all the districts we work in, across several states, directly and obviously in support, full support of the public system. So early childhood education has been a very important part of our own work as well. At the university, it's a very, very strong thrust area for us. It's a very critical part of the Masters in Education program, where our students spend significant time out in the field, in Anganwadis, supporting them, learning from them. And we also offer a diploma in early childhood education, a one-year diploma for working professionals, focused on people who are already in the field and need or are interested in learning further. The first graduating batch of the diploma will happen in, where is Ankur? May? In May this year. And that's something that we are delighted by, because these are practicing teachers, people working in the field who have come back to study more. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with that group. We've also begun, a diploma match in Bhopal, which is a group that is from the Madhya Pradesh public system, working in early childhood education. And they will go through the same 1-year diploma. They've just begun. So a year later, that will be our first graduating batch from Madhya Pradesh. Our university in Bhopal begins in July 23, and the MA education program there also will have a significant thrust on early childhood education. So it remains an important area for us. We are hoping to be able to build a group of people here on campus, working closely with those who work in the field, and of course, a strong set of alumni who will go out and continue working in early childhood education across the country. So a good time for the country overall, given the NEP and the NCF. And I think that makes a lot of us here very, very happy. And of course, as an organization for us and as an institution, it's an extremely important area. So this launch of the early learner assessment, which has come after a while, a lot of work put into it by many people who are seated here, tremendous effort, and I'm very, very happy that this is finally happening. So a very, very warm welcome to you once again. A special welcome to a few people. Uma Mahadevan Das Gupta, who's with us, who is part of the government of Karnataka, has been with us for, has been with us through this early childhood education journey for many years. Additional Chief Secretary, Karnataka, and Principal Secretary, Panchayati Raj. Reju hasn't joined us yet, but he's on the way. He's also been with us through this journey. And Reju is the nodal officer for early childhood education for the government of Karnataka. They've just released a state curriculum framework for early childhood, and he's been an integral part of that. Rekhaji again has been part of this entire journey. Rekhaji is the head of the School of Continuing Education at IGNOU. And I can see many others. I can see Lataji. I can see many others who've been part of this entire journey and who've contributed immensely to this field over the last many years. So thank you very much. I hope you'll have a good day. I hope you will enjoy and take a look at all the stalls outside. And I hope you'll get some time to be able to talk to each other as well. Well, it's a warm welcome to a warm day. But if you do get time, be nice to walk around the campus. You're welcome. Visit the library, go around, treat this as your home. So thank you very much for coming, and a very, very warm welcome once again. Thank you. Kinnari?
Thank you, Indu. So we move on to the launch that we've been waiting for. Indu shared about our journey in Sangareddy, a journey in early childhood education. And we began this work. We were learning, we were experimenting, we were learning from several other organizations. The Ambedkar University Center for Early Childhood Education and Development, the Center for Early Childhood Development and Research at Jamia Millia Islamia. We were learning from work that has happened across the country, across the globe. And we would like to acknowledge all of that has led to doing a range of things that we've built over the last decade in our work in early childhood education. I would like to invite Uma Mahadevan Das Gupta, Rekha ji here, Manoj, Indu, Lata, Ankur, Yogesh from our Sangareddy team here for this little release of the tool now. Could you please come on stage for a moment? Yeah. this is a handbook, a tool. It covers the process, the standardization process of this tool. I would request the team to give us a glimpse of what the book looks like. It's an AV glimpse, and then many of us could, if interested, could take a physical look at the book and have a copy if you're interested. The tool is also available online for downloading. You could access our website and have a copy for yourself. Yeah. Yes. And we now have a quick glimpse at what it took, what it led, what was the process like when we made the tool. That's also a AV video. It'll give you a short, quick glimpse of how we actually went about developing the tool and how it works on the field.
In a quality early childhood program, it is essential to know how children are performing. Assessing children is not an easy task. Children would move around, children would change their activities. We typically believe that observing children in their natural environments is one of the key ways to know how children are doing. In order to work at a large-scale intervention program, we felt there was a need to do a systematic one-on-one assessment of children. An early childhood education program will need to cater to children's developmental needs. An intervention of a large scale, especially that focuses on children between 3 to 6 years of age, will need to have mechanisms through which we can understand what is working on the ground, what is to be changed on the ground, how is it that we prepare teachers better, how is it that we develop or strengthen our curricula better. In order to develop an assessment method and an assessment tool that will help us understand children across all domains of development, our field team, university members, our assessment experts, and early childhood education professionals who've been working in the area for several years came together to develop a standardized tool.
After several rounds of discussion, the team has come up with 15 items. These items we tested in the field. The team has gone and learned a lot of things from the field. We have a qualitative information and quantitative information. In any education program or intervention, it is very important to rely on a decision-making task. To make right decision, the assessment is one of the important aspects. And assessment is always a challenging task, by what to choose, how to do, what to assess, how to assess, and when to assess also. So the contextualization is very important task. So for example, a child should capable of 3 plus or 4 plus between that age group child must capable to jump from 1.5 feet height. We choose a stool which is exactly at the height of 1.5 thing. Any standard stool which more or less is the same height. So we choose in that item so that it can be carried easily to every center and administer this, ensure the reliability and contextuality and objectivity of the item as well. If you see the other contextual relevance of the children, for example, I choose this item which relies on the aesthetic appreciation aspect. So this is a very important task. I think in my sense, no other tools have covered this aspect, which can be identified by a scenery, natural scenery. And another is a familiar aspect, that is familiar aspect of the child at their context. So that is a village picture. So that children are able to find out, and when we ask what do you like in this picture, they are easily identify the attributes, they easily identify the characters, and also why they like, they are able to see.
The early learner assessment tool serves as a feedback mechanism to the early childhood education initiative that we are doing at Sangareddy. For example, after getting the data of third year learner assessment that we did with children, we found that cognitive domain scores were less than all the other domains. So what we did was, we relooked at the modules that we were doing for capacity building of the teachers.
The information and insights that we gather about children, their development, through use of such a tool is likely to give us various insights into what is the kind of curriculum that is being offered to children. What are the specific inputs that a teacher needs? Is she able to work on a range of language activities? Is she able to work on a range of cognitive development activities with children? Does she need any other input on the way she manages the time and the timetable of the day? So there is various kinds of inputs that are possible to arrive at based on the data that we gather through assessing a large population of children. That's one key contribution of assessing children in a systematic one-on-one basis. Another kind of input that a tool like this or use of an assessment method like this would give us is what are our children doing? Are children across different settings performing in similar ways? Are children in urban setups performing in similar ways? Are children in rural setups performing in similar ways? So there are various ways in which an assessment tool like this can help a teacher, a curriculum developer, an early childhood professional.
Thank you. We thought a story is best told audiovisually rather than us talking about the tool. That was a little attempt at that. Any effort like this?
In a quality early childhood program, it is essential to know how children are performing.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, having 15 items, each items at 2 levels. When we say items, I mean questions in the tool. And each item having several tasks, right? It requires a rigorous process of reviewing of literature, looking at what child development indicators suggest to us, what can children universally be able to do, what should children in our local context be able to do. And several of us have invested a lot of time, went through a rigorous process of field testing. We'll talk about that, what are the kind of decisions we made. I would like to call out all my colleagues who have been an integral part of this process. I will take a moment to do that. Dr. Jigisha Shastri, who's been an integral part of working and developing, establishing this early childhood education program at the Azim Premji Foundation and the university. Dr. Rekha Sharma Sen, who's here with us. MSR, M. Srivas Rao, you just heard him here. Uma Maheshwara, whom you heard. Our contributing team, a large group of us from our field team at Sangareddy, who actually we tested about 120 children and then 800 plus children to be able to arrive at a tool like this. And so Sudarshan, Koteshwara, Krishnamurthy, Krishnaswamy, Lavanya, Mani, Manohar, Falguna, Prakash, Pradeep, Sujata, Shubha, who's at our school now, Venkatramana, and Yogesh. That was the team that actually went through all the critical elements of how every item should be asked. When we say it's standardized, we are also looking at what are the kind of wordings we are using, every minute process that we went through. So the team here, Sumana Shri, who's joined us online, she was a research assistant, played a very critical role in our, the entire process that we ran that time. Sharad Sure, who's the registrar of the university, he is a research, mathematical, and statistical expert who helped us collate all the data and help with the process of standardization. Editorial support from our communications team, Aditi, Ashruti, Jayashri, cover design by Shushnuta. You see a very pretty design here, and all our work that you see around, that's Shushnuta, Jayashri, and overall support by Ankur Madan, the Director of School of Education, Manoj, who is the Chief Operating Officer, and Sudesh, who heads our communications program at the university. It's truly been a very big collective effort to bring this little book out, and of course there were many others who've left us in the process. Those names I won't call out now, but we've duly acknowledged their work and contribution here again in the book that we've brought out today. Yeah. Yes, I think we'll now get into this phase of a little more deep dive into what the tool is about. We recently had the National Curriculum Framework for Foundation Stage and ECC released by the NCERT. We thought it was important to map. We developed this tool way back in 2014, and 2016-17 was the period when we went about doing the review of literature and looking at the items. So we've done an exercise of mapping how do the early learning outcomes, the curricular goals and competencies that have come in as a national guideline, how does this tool fare in terms of what it is trying to assess, and what are the items broadly indicating to us. I would invite my colleague Uma Maheshwara from our Sangareddy team to take us through a brief presentation just to give a glimpse of, again, the items and the mapping of the with the foundation stage learning outcomes. Thanks, Uma.
Thank you, Canary. Good morning, all. We have developed this tool 2014 and 15 year, but in the context of NEP 2020 and new national curriculum framework and the foundation curriculum framework has been placed and implementing across the years. So it is very important to check and also how fast these items are aligning to those curricular goals, competencies, and as well early learning outcomes. So I'll getting through this some of the items. Please see this. This is the mapping. If you see, a national curriculum framework foundation stage has enlisted and mentioned 5 domains of development, and also 13 curricular goals and 69 competencies across. So any assessment tool, it is very not necessarily gauge all the competencies extensively. So the items or tasks which are mentioned to be tested should be representation of multiple tasks, each item. So if you see this tool, we cover all the 5 domains of development. And apart from these curricular goals, first domain itself, out of 3 curricular goals, 3 curricular goals are addressing. And the competencies, if you see, 4 broader competencies that it is covering. At the same time, socio-emotional ethical development, out of 3, it covers 1, which is very important aspect of free play. And cognitive development, 2 curricular goals out of all 2, and language and literacy, and the same. This is the mapping. And I'm sure that most of the core competencies which are necessary for a child to transform from preschool to primary, so these items are covering such that. So I will get through this, some of the selective items, because time constraint, we can't discuss about all the 15 items. 31 tasks are there. So task is about a perform-based task, individual task, group task is also there. For one example, the National Curriculum Framework Foundation Stage Goal 4 and 5, where the core competencies like 4.3 and 5.1 as addressing through this free play observation activity. So these are the middle box is representing the competencies. So if you see the robust rubrics, if you go through each and every one, the gradation of these rubrics of this assessment task gives us the trajectory approach from 3+ level to 5+ level. If you see, this is a task of observation of free play of children for 15 minutes. So each and every task represents the social participation of the child play. For example, child is not playing, just observing, maybe standing out in one spot. is like unoccupied play, and 2, this as a cooperative play stage that. So these are very simple illustrative rubrics that every assessor can easily understand, and also gauge the level of child participation, who are their partners, how they are choosing their partners, what are the play items they are preferring. So these are the qualitative information that we can get from this. If you see another example for cognitive and numeracy development, so the goal 8 is addressing with these competencies, and these competencies are very extensive. And in NCF Foundation, they stage the competencies are trajected from 3 years to 8 years age. The task here is very simple, indigenous materials. Anybody can pick these kind of manipulatives from the neighborhood. So this is the set of 3 tasks. So one-to-one correspondence, identifying fewer and more, and also countables, picking of countables. So all the pre-numeracy basic fundamental skills that they need to know with the given cognitive development as well. So this is one simple task. It addressing these curricular goals as well. If you see the rubrics also, it is level specific rubrics. From unable to perform any of the 3 tasks, there is a certain score, and able to do more or fewer tasks, any 1 task, 2 tasks, 3 tasks also, the performance is gauged in such that in a robust way and a comprehensive understanding of children level of understanding in numeracy. And this is one of the important item. So aesthetic appreciation and cultural development. If you see the goal, the new foundation stage goal is children develop abilities, sensibilities in visual and performing arts, and express their emotions through art in a meaningful, joyful way. So here they are supposed to choose any one of the tasks or both the cards, and they able to convey the why they prefer this task, why they like this. If you see the rubrics here, so it doesn't give any reasons why they liked it, certain score. And just saying it is good, nice, beautiful, or points, any object in the picture, there is certain level of score. Because any aesthetic sense, how you measure it? Understanding their attributes. If you see this auditorium, isn't it very pleasant and appealing? So what is appealing? It may be the color, it may be the pattern of the seating. So these are the attributes. In the same way, in any picture, we able to like that picture based on certain attributes, it is subjective. But with this kind of rubrics, it is easily understand their intensity of appealing the aesthetic sense. So this is one of the unique tasks which any other item is covering, and current practices, any other tools. So for language and literacy, this is a simple picture reading task. So it is language 1 only. So language 1 is about the child mother tongue, and this is also the robust rubrics that you have. You see this table, unable to respond or speak, and names or identifies one or more objects to tell. Meaning means an integrated narration. Some children are able to narrate a story from this picture. So their level of comprehension is in that way, using their previous knowledge and using their vocabulary. This is how the level 1 to level 2 kind of performances are able to easily gauge and understand. And one more thing I able to look at you is these are physical tasks. Even washing hand observation also for the goal 1. And the same manner, these are robust understanding of each and every domain, representation of each competencies, broader level. And the rubrics itself for a teacher or a school leaders are also very helpful to diagnose the children level of understanding and their developmental progression as well. So for the school teachers, school leaders, even for any program manager who want to understand the impact of the program, this tool is very, very helpful. And we are using this tool from past 5-6 years consistently to gauge our own impact and interventions with Anganwadi centers. So we can rely on these kind of tasks. Even other tasks in the cognitive and emergent literacy also you can see, understand the world knowledge and their logical thinking also. And some oral questions are also there, they're able to see. I think because of time constraint, I can't explain each and every item here. these documents can be available on the website for further reference and extensive understanding. Thanks for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma, for taking us through this mapping. We now move on to the panel discussion. I see some of you in the, why don't you settle down while we, yeah. Please come in. There is space here on this side of the auditorium. There's space in the center, a couple of seats everywhere, yes. We have a large group of teachers on campus and they're just coming in. Yes, please settle. Thanks. Yeah. We move on to the segment on the panel discussion that we thought again would give us a deeper idea of the significance of assessment. Today's topic is in that sense very focused. We are talking about assessment of young children. And I would like to invite our panelists now on stage. Professor Rekha Sharma Sen. She has a double master's in child development from Delhi University, master's in elementary education from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. She has a PhD from Delhi University that explored indigenous notions of creativity among teachers and children. Rekha works at IGNOU and has developed distance education programs and study in ECC for teachers, teacher educators, and curriculum developers. IGNOU's diploma in ECC is a popular program, and recently she has launched the PG diploma in early childhood education and foundational stage education. Her areas of work are ECCE, early literacy, disability, and she's presently the professor and director of the School of Continuing Education at IGNOU. Welcome, Rekha. Thank you for being with us through the journey. We have a lot to hear from her on how this kind of tools operate and this particular tool as well. I would now invite M. Srinivas Rao, state head of our work at Telangana. MSR, as we call him, has his work is in assessment of large scale. He's been with the journey in early childhood education from 2010 of the foundation. And again, we have things to hear from him on how this works, how the tool works, the process of standardization at a large scale. Welcome, MSR. Thank you for being with us. I now invite Dr. Shipra Suneja. Shipra, my colleague at the School of Education. Her work is on the social aspects of children's development in social constructivist settings, the social construction as a process of child's development. She currently anchors our early childhood education work at the School of Education. Welcome, Shipra. Thank you for being on the panel. Thank you. Yes, I shall be moderating this session. Hello. There are a few more seats empty in the middle in case you want to have a seat. No? All right. Okay, sometimes it's nice to sit on the stairs right in the middle. All right, so we'll spend about next 40 minutes on discussing the significance of early childhood assessments. Yeah, this is working good. Thank you. This will be followed by a question and answer session. So I would suggest all of you to keep taking note of thoughts, questions, queries that you may have, and we could take them up. A large group of us who've developed the tool are here in the audience as well, and they would also be able to respond to some questions. Yeah. So my first question to Shipra. Assessment, we've been saying, is an integral part of the curriculum development and an early childhood curricula especially. However, it's a challenging task and necessary at the same time. So if you could help us, reiterate the significance of assessment, importance of assessment as a curricular process, I think it will help us understand that. Yes.
Am I audible? Yeah. Thank you, Kinnari. So assessment in early years, we often look at assessment as measurement of child's ability, the learning environment. But assessment is really a process. Like learning is a process, like curriculum development, pedagogy is a process. Assessment is a process as well. And early childhood is a stage, as we know, is of rapid progress. Development is at a very fast rate in the different domains. And so assessment also is quite complex in early years. It is not a simple task of taking, knowing whether the child can do X or child can do Y. It is a more complex task which has to be woven with the learning process. So in that sense, assessment and learning are quite related to each other and should be. Assessment is also, we are then gathering data. We are trying to understand what is happening with what we have done, what kind of outcomes we are expecting, and then we are interpreting it. And this gathering of data for children, for the learning environment, can happen through different methods like observations, using anecdotal records, building children's portfolios, using several development checklists or scales, depends on what we are assessing in this area of early childhood education. It's a critical process. It's a very critical process because it helps us understand who is this child that we are working with, what does this child need, what kind of support the child needs in the process of their development and learning. It is like, I'll give you an example. It is like when a child begins to move and the child tries to hold the table and moves, and the parent watches the child and the child stretches their hand. The parent assesses that, oh, the child is now ready to move probably on their own, independently. So they'll stretch out their hands and call the child. So I have assessed that the child is now ready for something, and I'm willing to provide the child the support they need. And so assessment is an ongoing process in that sense. It is crucial, it is critical because it helps us have a profile of the development and learning that the child is going through. It is crucial because it helps us understand the unique patterns, the interests, the attitudes of children, and how to work with children, not just an overall sense of what children are doing, but how to work with each child in that sense. It also helps us assess our own programs. Assessment is not just of the child or the child's progress or growth, it is assessing the program in itself or the curriculum or teachers' own planning. So it helps us understand what kind of learning outcomes have we set for children, how are children achieving, what kind of support children would need. And of course, it is also important because it helps us assess any challenges or difficulties children may be facing, children may be experiencing in these processes of in the learning environment that we are trying to create, the curriculum that we are trying to provide to the child. So I would say it's more of a tool for reflection for the teacher to see how to plan, how to work with children, and how contextually relevant and culturally appropriate that tool is.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for laying out those nuances about the process of assessment, Shipra. My next question to Rekha, who's had a very wide-ranging experience in the field of child development and early childhood education, and you've been involved with several initiatives that involve assessment of young children. So, what would be your, learnings or insights you would like to offer to us on these individualized child-wise assessment? You know, we do group observations of children in classrooms. At the same time, for understanding a child's growth and development, individualized assessment has some space and a particular format that we've followed for this large-scale assessment tool. So your insights on that would be useful, Rick.
Firstly, to the university and Kinnari, you were leading the development of the tool. Hearty congratulations. It's a momentous occasion because we really do not have too many tools which are standardized on Indian children. So I suppose we'll be talking more about the tool and more about our insights on the tool a little later. But to answer your broader question just now, children have to be tested individually, but the scores should not be seen as a reflection of the individual child. So I think that is the important point that we need to keep in mind always. We tend to do, even in our classroom assessment, we sort of do the individual testing of the child. It is required, but then we sort of use that assessment to label the child or to think about only that child. Whereas what needed to be done was to use that individual assessments in a collective manner and to actually reflect upon your own self, whether it be the Anganwadi worker or it be a teacher teaching any class. But that, bridging somehow in the pace of things or in the hurriedness of our everyday teaching, we sort of, or in our hurriedness to prepare a report card or to give a feedback to the parent, that is the point that we tend to forget. So if we could keep that in mind always, that an assessment of the child is actually an assessment of your program, your schools or your Anganwadi or your center's program, and actually more than that, an assessment of your teaching. If the child couldn't do it, whom would you like to hold accountable for that? So I think that's a broader response that I would like to. The assessment will have to be individual, but not its interpretation.
Right, yeah. Thanks
Unless you're doing it for a diagnostic testing,
right,
which I don't think we are talking about the tool in that any tools right now.
Yeah.
Those would be screening tools or diagnostic tests where the assessment and the interpretation is individualized.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for emphasizing that, Rekha. MSR, this has been the result of our understanding that we've built on our field program on the ground, the effectiveness of the large-scale EC intervention that we do with the district of Sangareddy, the Women and Child Development Department. So could you elaborate the need for the tool that we obviously heard on the film, but what was the need, how we've been using it, what was the overall programmatic relevance that we see over the last many cycles of assessing and using this tool on the ground?
Yeah, thank you, Kinnari. I'll start with little history about it. We were engaging in large-scale randomized evaluations with the government of Andhra Pradesh in 5 states. What does it improve the learning levels of the children in schools? Then we were doing a lot of interviews with the teachers and everyone blaming others. Suppose if you go to class 5 teachers, he will blame class 1 and class 2 teachers. So we are slowly trying to understand where is the problem. Then we did a school readiness pilot also. Then suddenly all the EC center transferred to the Women and Child Welfare Department. So we don't have option. So now we started exploring to work with the Women and Child Welfare Department. So initially itself we had a roadblock. So they've asked us, what do you know about Women and Child Welfare Department? And we are doing everything. We don't require your support. Then we take a permission to understand what is happening with the children in Anganwadi on early childhood education. Then we did a large-scale research study. We went to around 170 villages, 247 Anganwadis, 40,000 households, and we submitted the report to the department. Then they have given a permission to start work in Medak district that time. So with that experience and previous experience, we want to start everything in a
scientific manner to understand what works, what doesn't work in the field of early childhood education, because it's a new initiative for us. So as a team, 13, 14 of us came together. All we don't have any background of child development or working experience in the domain of ECE. Then we want to take a small steps with understanding. Hence, we started exploring to look for the tools which can measure our work impact. So first, what we've done is we have took the Ambedkar University ECQuest tool, and we did a baseline in a systematic way in 6 sectors and 157 Anganwadis, out of which we selected 40 different kinds of Anganwadis with own building, without building, with different teachers' qualification and children composition. Then later, what we realized is that we were able to understand the quality of the Anganwadi process. And same time, I think the 2013 EC policy and curriculum framework thrown a lot of question to us. How do we understand the child development? What is the mechanism? Do we go with observation, and what are the other tools available in the country? Then we looked at various things, and only tool available is school readiness tool, but that is meant for 5+ children, not for 3+ and 4+. Hence, I think the first time the academicians, EC domain experts, Jigisha, Rekha, all of us came together, and first time the tool developed in the field. We had a 2 rounds of workshop, all of us together in the year of 2014, September and November, and we developed, and we want to be very sure. I think in one of the discussion, I don't know, Rekha might feel bad, but for one item, there was a big debate between Jigisha and Rekha, and we were spectators. It went up to 11 in the night. So they don't want to compromise because this kind of tool will give a lot of reliability, and we need to understand the social context, what kind of instructions we should have, how do we administer the tool with young children. Because of various things and various aspects we need to consider. So we went in a systematic manner. We did 2 rounds of pilot. First we did with 55 children, later we went to 100+ children. And first time we rolled out this program in 2014-15 with 835 children. Both we have experimental, where we are supporting the teachers, and where we don't support, where we don't work at all. We have a control. So continuously, this is a 5th year, 5 rounds of assessment we have done. This helped us a lot to understand what is child development, how children will learn, how do we take these learnings to the teachers, how do we make the teacher understand, Anganwadi teacher understand what kind of things she needs to do in the classroom, what kind of observation she would require, and how to provide the opportunities for every child, and then take it back to the parents. How do we explain to the parents so that they will also do something at home and they will have a fair understanding about Anganwadi? Because earlier Anganwadi means it's a just food center or Tika center kind of thing. So they don't think some education happens in Anganwadi. Now I think because of all these inputs, we work with the teachers on the capacity building, and we worked on the curricular aspects also, and we are continuously taking the feedback and having a discussion with the functionary so that they will also understand the importance of the child development and the assessment role in assessing the understanding the child development also. Hence it helped us a lot. Because of that, year by year, whatever the programs we are doing, we streamline. Now we have come up with some kind of multimodal approach which can work at the large scale. We started our journey with 40 Anganwadis. Now we are working with 1500 Anganwadis in the district, where we are saying that we could make at least in every sector, at least 4 or 5 Anganwadis can be a demonstrable Anganwadis. Those teachers can demonstrate how they can work with the children and how do they see the child development. Hence we have done a lot of things in the field of early childhood education in Sangareddy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, MSR, for taking us through this long journey, and as a programmatic intervention, the role of looking at not just children's assessment, but assessment of the program, the ICDS intervention program at large. When we started this and we did the first round of assessment way back in 2015, the kind of data that we gathered from the control set of Anganwadis and our experimental Anganwadis, there was marginal difference, and it was more a baseline that we conducted. And over the last few years, we've now been providing the input and we've been assessing. So the systematic change that we should see, like Rekha was mentioning, that it was a reflection on what the teacher was doing, what we were doing as an organization supporting work of Anganwadi teachers. And the kind of change that we see in the child's development is then goes back to what the input the teacher has provided. So thanks for highlighting that. And it's not just this tool, this we used, standardized, but we've used a set of tools, set of other kinds of questionnaires, discussed with Anganwadi workers, used the EC course that MSR was mentioning. That's the Early Childhood Quality Assessment Scale. It's a very comprehensive scale. We adapted that further to be, looking at Anganwadi centers as centers of providing early childhood education. I'm sure many of us who work in the non-governmental sector may be familiar with that tool. My next question to Rekha again, like MSR mentioned, hours of discussions, hours of review of items, debating what is it that we provide as a question, the situations, the various prompts. So the tool, when you look at and get a glimpse of it yourself, you'll see that it's a very detailed step-by-step process that we finally came out with. So could you throw some light on this entire field testing process, the basis of the decisions we made, the final items we selected, the way in which we came about the rubric that Uma presented some time back?
Yeah. So I'll make 2 or 3 points which point towards the ideological basis for tool formation and why I think that this particular tool is different from the other tools that I know or that I have seen. So obviously when you decide to think of items, you do some literature survey, you rely on tools. We had 2 basic tools, the school readiness instrument of the Ambedkar University and a developmental assessment measure developed by the Center for Early Childhood Development and Research at Jamia Millia. For various reasons, we found that these tools were not adequate because of either the age group tested or the way the rubrics were. So talking of rubrics, let me say that and I'm talking only about these Indian tools. I'm not talking about the other tools like MelQ or the IDELA which are available, but which are not really the Indian tools. So one of the things that we found was that the Indian tools tended to test the children on a binary. Kar sakta hai, nahi kar sakta hai. Or at the most with a little bit of a help. So one of the things we really struggled with is that enough for us to develop a scale? Should we be testing children only on the basis of performed, not performed, or just performed with support? So the rubrics that you see are not an armchair, or just rubrics developed on the basis of literature survey or out of somebody's head. When the initial set of questions were identified, both based on other tools and also a lot of brainstorming, they were actually tested out in the field. And the field researchers got the data back to us that this is how the children are responding. And so it was an iterative process. Their responses were taken and were built into the rubrics. So you just saw a flash of what Uma said. Perhaps you noticed that something had a rubric of up to 4. Something had a rubric of up to 7. Something also had a rubric of up to 11. So this is what we saw children doing. And we decided that this is how we need to rate their development. So it is a tool which has items for 3+ and 4+, varying in complexity. But within a particular age group, the rubric will tell you how a certain 3-year-old may be at a higher competence as compared to another 3-year-old. I think this is a very big strength of the tool emanating from the children's observations of development in the field. And the people who collected the data were an integral process of tool development. So this hiatus which exists between academics and the people on the ground was fairly almost completely eliminated. There were cases that when we went in a particular way, we devised something as academics, and then the feedback came and we had to revise it because this is not what the children were doing, or this were in addition. So the exploration of the book, I think we initially went with 4 rubrics. It's a 11 rubric item. This was the variation in children's development that was captured. So that's one very important point which I don't see in other Indian tools, at least. I'm not really talking about the other IDELA and MELQ. I haven't really actually seen the detailed items because they are not available online as such. You need to buy those tools to be able to see them. A second important point that I want to say about the tool development, which was also a learning from the field. We didn't plan it like that, but that's how finally the tool is. We had our standard item, gin sakta hai ya nahi, is able to put in alignment, is able to describe the picture. What we felt, and this too once again from the research investigators, you would also see that sometimes other tools tell you prompt the child. But it is not really clear how many times am I to prompt. And once again, it is the field investigators who told us, kitni baar bolna hai ki usko dobara karo? How many, if he doesn't want to climb on the stool to jump, how many times should we tell the child to stand up? How many times should we encourage? And actually the child can stand on the stool when we helped. But was not willing to stand, but once he could stand, then he could jump. This gave us this whole idea based on the theoretical idea of the zone of proximal development, that should we only be testing the final performance or should we be testing performance in progress? So I think this is a very unique point about the tool, that it tests performance in progress, because the way you administer the item, you begin from just asking the child to perform the item, but when you find that the child doesn't do it, you provide a verbal encouragement. And there also there are layers. Maybe you just provide a verbal encouragement by hinting at something. Then maybe you provide a verbal encouragement by actually giving a more definite feature of what the child should be looking for. Then at the next level, you probably demonstrate. When you find the child is not even doing with verbal thing, you demonstrate. Acha, aise lagate hain. This is how you put the sequence. Maybe the child even doesn't do that with your demonstration, and then we had a third level of prompt of physical, actually helping the child, actually making the child stand on the stool, or actually doing something on behalf of the child. And so this level of support which gets incorporated in the instructions itself. So the instructions appear on the face of it very detailed. For the first time person who will be using it, you will say, "Arey, ye to mera assessment ho raha hai, bacche ka kya assessment ho raha hai?" Because I have to remember the layers of instruction. And first I have to do this, then this, then this, then that. But you sort of test about 4 or 5 children and you get around to it. So this incorporation of support, this incorporation of seeing it as child's assessment as a part of his learning process is, I think, something which is very unique about the tool, which is also insights gained from the field researchers. So we can't really thank the field researchers enough. It was a unique opportunity for academics and researchers to come together on equal footing and to sort of contribute into the development of the tool. So I think these are the true very, very important strengths of the tool as such, which for the present, that's what I would like to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rekha. So like again, what Rekha mentioned, right, that every item is very unique, and every item and this number of rubrics, and that's given the nature of the item. For some items, only 5 steps or 5 levels were enough to know that this is the scope of the item. But for some others, there were 7 or 11 levels that we managed to put together. And it is important to note each of this as a teacher again, or as a curricular input again. And that's what I think we've tried to work that and standardize it through the levels of children. All children were tested on all items, right? So 3+ and 4+ children were tested across items. So it's not meant that 3-year-old child will be able to do only a certain set of items. It was not that only 4+ children will be able to do certain set of items. All children, because development is a progressive process, it's a step-by-step progression. So we felt that all children, irrespective of the age, must be tested for all items. So thank you for highlighting that, Rekha. Rekha mentioned a couple of other tools. ELA, the International Development of Early Learners Assessment Tool, the MELQ, there are a couple of other tools, and in the Indian context, if any other tools exist. So Shipra, would you be able to share a little bit of insight if what are these tools like? What are they used on typically? We don't get access to many of these tools, and it's hard to find more details.
So what Rekha said, these tools are very expensive and have to be bought to be studied, and also we don't have so much information, but just to get a sense of the kinds of tools and the kind of assessments these tools are doing, I'll just give you a brief sense of what some of these tools. So the MELQ is measuring early learning quality and outcomes. It is a UNICEF tool that was released, the handbook was released in 2017. It assesses children from 4 to 6 years and looks at development of children and quality of learning environment. It includes direct child observations and parent and teacher surveys. Similarly, what both Rekha and Kinnari mentioned, ELA is International Development and Early Learning Assessment Tool. Again, this is a direct child assessment tool of assessing children in the age group of 3.5 to 6 years. The domains of assessment include motor development, emergent literacy, numeracy, social emotional development. So these are all assessing children for readiness for schooling. Then there is also the RNEC tool, which is East Asia Pacific Early Childhood Development Scale, EAP ECDS, again assessing children from 3 to 5 years on domains of development. There is a specific emergent literacy and math tool, Save the Children Fund. Knowledge and skills assessment takes place on indicators such as phonological awareness, print awareness, letter identification, and so on. So most of these tools for child development and learning are for school readiness, and then contextualizing it being culturally appropriate is a major question. Not all these tools are contextualized. They are being used by several countries, but how contextually relevant these tools are for those countries itself, that is a thing to question.
Thank you. Thanks, Shipra. So there is early childhood education. I think several institutions, organizations make this effort to see what best intervention we can provide to children. At the same time, given our context of varied levels and kinds of preschools, the Anganwadi as a preschool, our private preschools, schools that offer preschool programs, so the range is diverse, the input that we provide to our children is also diverse. And in this context, how can we have a tool which will take care of our local children's need? I think that's what we've tried to manage to achieve in this exercise. And of course, this is not a final tool again. We will have to relook at that. We will have to rework on that and keep working towards a more local, contextual, standardized assessment measures for us. So Rekha, again, would you like to add on to this, or the range of experiences that you've had? You've used this tool with other organizations, any insights of using this tool or other tools for children in different sections?
So I was just also reflecting, Kinnari, that I think you did a very good task of mapping this tool on the current national curriculum framework. So I think that it's not as if we had that thought at that time. But we just followed a developmental domains approach. I think it's also important to note that in many tools, the socio-emotional development domain is usually not directly assessed. You ask the teacher. in many of the early childhood tools, that depends upon the response by the teacher. What do you think? आपको क्या लगता है ये बच्चा sharing है, cooperative है, XYZ? So I'm not saying that we have assessed all the domains, but and also the creative development domain has been assessed, which is a very, very difficult domain to assess. And some of the tests on creative thinking are a bit superficial in the sense that, they just ask this, they say you say a word and then the respondent has to say back many words, and out of those words there is sort of a demarcation on which was a more unusual word. So I think if you see some of these two domains which have been assessed, this is not easy to assess directly on children. I know of no other Indian tool which assesses socio-emotional and creative development domains directly on children and by asking them. And here too, we would like to just give an example of how the field, field investigators gave us a feedback and how the tool has shaped, which is very important. So we had one of the questions on, I think in our tool, MSR, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was that अगर आप घर आएं और आप देखें कि ताला लगा हुआ है तो आप क्या करेंगे? Seems a pretty normal thing. The response from the field was that children started crying when they heard this question. So we then felt that we cannot ask such a question which creates such a fear in children. So this is not something which only academics sitting and just creating an item would have thought of. Changing this, we would have let it go. So I'm not really sure how many tools actually operate by pilot test or are actually developed by pilot testing them on the field, incorporating the response. One very beautiful observation, I think Uma only said those, you've seen these cards and maybe another card. So initially these were made on A3 size paper. And imagine the minute observation of the field investigators. They said that the A3 paper size is so big that the investigators felt that the child is not looking at the whole picture. The child is not looking like this. The paper is so big that the child is only getting focused to a particular area. So we got the feedback that we should reduce the size of our paper because it's too much for the child's field of vision. So that's something. And of course, as Kinnari is asking, I was fortunate to do a research study with Child Relief and You in Delhi, where they wanted to study the curriculum in Anganwadi and private preschools. And obviously the way to study that was to assess the children. And we used the tool to assess the children. It does take a bit of a learning in the beginning, as I said, because the assessor has to memorize the sequence, because otherwise it won't flow. You cannot be looking at your book and saying, acha, yahan I had to give a verbal prompt, now I should say this. So it takes a bit of a practice. It helps if two people are there, because one keeps taking out and the other keeps, taking out the material, laying it out, while the other is interacting directly with the child. It's a bit, you can say, in that sense, expensive, because if you were to employ research investigators per child, you are having two people. So in that sense, it can appear a bit expensive, but I don't really see what other way there is with one person interacting with the child and also taking notes and also laying out the material. So it appears in that sense to be a bit intensive, but it also, when there are two people, the other person is also seeing how this person is doing. And so in the next time when you assess and you're making some, you can see the type of errors that you could possibly make, and you sort of change that. So we had a very good, we studied children and assessed, and Kinnari, to be absolutely honest, since that was the first study on which we were using this tool which hadn't been tried anywhere. So I was a bit nervous. I said, here I'm working with an organization and giving them inputs and saying, just use this tool, as if this is absolutely the right tool. So we did use some items from the Ambedkar University's school readiness instrument, not all, because it would have become too much. And so, that had, in my mind, that had two reasons. One was that if we won't get good enough data on the Azim Premji tool, we'll get at least some data on the tried and tested school readiness instrument. But I'm really happy to report that the items, there were parallel items which we selected from the school readiness instrument. The results were similar on the Azim Premji item which measured those domains and on the school readiness instrument which measured those domains. So the items were different, but the domains measured by those items were different. So that in a way actually, corroborates, both the tools is what I would also say, that it corroborates. And yeah, we got results which showed that a particular type of curriculum led to better gains of the children on the tool, which is to be expected. So in that sense, the tool is able to differentiate between the different types of curricula that are in practice. So that speaks something about the tool. But having said that, I think we need to, and I think you have stated it upfront, it needs to be remembered that this 800 children on whom the tool has been tested are children who are getting the Anganwadi curriculum. So, that is the population. So sometimes also the tools don't really announce their population. I think in a very upfront way, the population has been announced. So if you test it on a very different population, which is probably getting a different type of a curricular framework, you might find the tool to be easy or difficult for those children. So I think that's also the next steps. Yeah. It would be very good if the teachers who are present could use the tool and provide the data to the university with the profile of the children who are there, because that would serve for you to know, are the levels that have been thought of. Because I think this is the dilemma, and Lata ma'am would also agree, so many conferences we've had where we are not really able to decide what actually a 3 or a 4-year-old should be able to do, because the opportunities available to them in different learning contexts are very different. Yeah. So if that sort of a data comes from the large group of people who would be testing it, even numbers like 50 or 100 are not small, they accumulate up to be many numbers. It will help you to know how to move forward, whether this tool is testing appropriate levels in all contexts. Yeah. Thankfully, you are not claiming that. Yeah. So, but that would help you to develop the tool further and to take it to its next steps.
That's right. And like you started, with that the competencies provided in the curriculum framework, the national curriculum framework, which again seem to be based on child development indicators, and then we see what we are offering as our curricula in early childhood programs. And then we see how our own assessment at classroom levels with the use of a tool like this gives us a more comprehensive understanding of what we are expecting to do as curricular inputs and what children are able to perform at. So that triangulation of what we aim, what children are able to do, and what inputs we are providing, I think that's a very central reason to even use assessments of this kind, or any assessment in general. So thanks for highlighting that. And like Rekha mentioned, it will be very useful to hear your experiences, data if you're willing to share on the ecc@apu.edu.in, our email. We can be in touch. And since the tool is available as open access on our website, you'll need to fill in some details. We've requested why you would like to use the tool as well. So if you can indicate that and be in touch with us, that will be wonderful. Wonderful to pursue this effort of assessments, standardized assessments, what works with different populations of children. So we've been talking about the strengths of the tool, how it's been faring in general. I would like to ask MSR, since we've used it now for about 5 cycles in Sangareddy, and at large scale, the recent assessment that we did for is about 1,000 children, who've been receiving and inputs as the preschool program at the Anganwadi Center. So what have been some of the challenges, limitations, or you think things that we've been constantly pursuing, improvising in the way we use the tool for assessment? Yeah.
I think when you are administering this kind of tool, you'll have both frustrations and fun also. So I think the major thing what Rekha mentioned, so the assessor needs to understand the entire tool. They should have some background of child development, the classroom process, etc. The other challenge is what we are facing, it's very time consuming. We can't hurry up the child. We have to give enough time to the children. That's what we have keep on telling to our administrators. So that's a major thing. So because of our team experience, this is the 5th time, This time, I think they're able to do in a faster. And what we are trying to do is the instructions more or less standardized. Suppose there are 30 SSs, each one will give the similar kind of instructions. There is no plus or minus kind of thing. So that it will give us a confidence on the data quality. So because we are testing the quality of the data also, as Rekha was mentioning, a lot of qualitative information we consider while finalizing the item. So first time I think we have applied the item response theory analysis also when we are finalizing the items. That helped us and data also revealing that, okay, this tool is working in different contexts and different settings also. Now the biggest challenge is, suppose if you want to make the teachers to use this tool in their context, that's the biggest challenge I would see. Because even whatever the cards they have now assessment, we have been working with the teachers for the last 6-7 years. We are advocating a lot how to write the observation on each child, how to understand the child development that would help you to do things in the Anganwadi as well as communicate back to the parents also. How the child is able to learn in Anganwadi and why these developments are important. How to showcase this work to the parents also so that they will get the confidence on their children development also. So I don't know whether time permits. I have a small video on the, recently we did a teacher seminar in Sangareddy. Some of the teachers, how they have transformed their entire thing. So earlier they are not doing anything. So in the department provides a card. There are 56 indicators. Every time every quarter they need to fill that card. So as Rekha mentioned, there is a single star, double star, triple star, with the support, without support, on their own, etc. So they are not filling that also. Now, at least good number of teachers are able to write the child observations on a monthly basis. So that is really motivating us to take this tool to the teachers. Now we are getting confidence that, okay, this tool also they will be able to administer with the large number of children. Because ultimately they need to own it. That's our purpose.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for highlighting that. And to the audience sitting here, I would just want to reiterate that here we're talking of a context where the Anganwadi teacher is a teacher looking at several things she's supposed to do with children. And the preschool program is only a part of it, right? Whereas many of us sitting here, we offer a good 4-hour curriculum to children right from nursery until grade 1 and above. So the focus, the abilities, the skill set, the insights and training to work with children is of a very different order to the population of users that we are talking about here. So again, I personally would like to emphasize that since this is based on child development indicators, and with each item in itself, how we can contextualize items of these tools within the context that you are going to use, others are going to use, is something for us to consider, something for the users of the tool also to consider. That should we run the whole tool in, so when we do large scale assessment, we want to complete the exercise in a week's time, for instance, all children we need to assess. But when we are working at a classroom level, if the teacher was herself supposed to use the tool, the nature of use of these items and rubrics would change, within the week, she knows they're familiar children to her, and the kind of insight she's able to pick up, and the time that she takes to also administer the tool is likely to be very different. So I just thought that the extensions of these items that we've developed and the way it is used could be different again for different contexts and for different purposes. As a teacher, what you're trying to do, as a school, what you're trying to do, as a programmatic intervention at an NGO level, what you're trying to do. Each of these will have different ways in which the perhaps could be used. Yeah. So with this, Rekha.
Since the government is also represented, I just had this idea.
Dr. Reju is also here. Welcome,
Yes.
sir. Yeah.
So you see, in 2014, the Ambedkar University did this very large-scale study, which is the India Early Childhood Impact Assessment Study. And they used their school readiness instrument. That was a time when the restructuring of the ECC curriculum wasn't taking place. They have huge data which is out there in the public. I was thinking that it's now been 10 years since ICDS was restructured, and all the governments are taking a lot of interest in restructuring their curriculum. perhaps it's the right time, with the Ambedkar study serving as a baseline of what was the state of the children or the program when the restructuring was just being thought about. And 10 years down the line, maybe using a tool which is standardized on the Anganwadi children, it would perhaps be time, maybe a state-wise large-scale study to see how the assessment, how the curriculum changes have impacted children's readiness. So, using the IECI study now as a baseline and collecting data afresh now, using this tool standardized on Anganwadi children and doing a large-scale assessment, maybe and Karnataka has implemented its own Chilli-Pilli, and the entire state machinery is so dynamic, I could not help resisting making this, sort of a suggestion, if it could be taken up.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Rekha. Yeah, the scope is immense, how we can gather systematic data and provide interventions. So we open this floor up to questions from the audience. Any thoughts? I know it's a very technical discussion. It takes some bit of engagement with the items for all of us to know what we're talking about. Any questions, thoughts, comments, queries that have emerged in the last half an hour? Yes, please. Yeah, our volunteers can second.
Firstly, congratulations and also all the best, because being in the field of education, we know the pain.
Could you also introduce yourself very briefly?
I'm Sri Raghavan, and I represent Abik Lifeversity and Abik Academy. I'm a co-founder of Number Nagar, which basically deals with children learning math and English.
Right.
Okay, so one thing that I was actually kind of looking for, the reason why I came here for this also was to see if there's some diagnostic test, which I think during the course you also clarified, Rekha ji, that currently this is not a diagnostic tool, but also for me, where I'm coming from is some of these assessments and also looking at the population that we're dealing right now. I deal mostly with children in Bangalore, okay? And we've seen a lot of raise in the requirement of a diagnostic tool also at a very early age. Between even at the nursery level, we see children with a lot of learning difficulties, okay? But sticking to this particular context, okay? One is how easy is it for us to improvise on the tools that you have, okay? Have you thought about it? Because since it's been tested primarily on Anganwadi, but you're also looking at people to collaborate and then test it in our context, and then we could probably come back and tell you what are our observations. So that is where one is that. And what's the rigidity of the tool, right? If you can throw some light on this, maybe it'll help people, to work on those things. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Should I? Yeah. So to the first question on diagnostics, it is not a diagnostic test. We look at children's holistic development, and the items cater to all domains of development. We've looked at children on the typical development curve, right? At the same time, like Rekha said, a child who's able to do, unable to do, and we've kind of fine-tuned the rubric to incorporate the various nuances that may be there within each of the developmental domain, right? So that's the first, and we would suggest it not be. It may throw insights. It may quickly tell you that, oh, every time I've tried to see, it's not just this particular item where I want the child to talk, but it's in the classroom that the child isn't talking or is not participating or is not. So you have a broader sense of the child based on which you can rest your diagnostics. It's not a clinical tool in that sense, right? So that's the first level of response. The second on, the population. Yes, it has been used extensively in urban populations, like Rekha mentioned with the CRY program. They tried in the urban low socioeconomic status children accessing preschool programs there, and we've tried in the rural context. So between these and then your own population, I think we really, for the tool itself, we lack the urban, more focused preschool intervention population to able to validate that how it works across domains. But my own, again, personal technical hunch on this is that we are likely to see some influence of intervention, whereas some items are likely to still tell us how the child is progressing within that scope of the domain itself. That's my very yes, Rekha.
So I just wanted to add that in terms of a screening tool, we need to be clear what is it that we want to screen for. And learning disability, to the best of my understanding, is not a term we should be using for a child till the child is at least about 7. So if we want to test, if we want to screen for disability, that's fairly quote unquote easy, because a child with intellectual disability, I think that's what we are concerned about, would show a delay in all milestones of development. So if you would just follow the child development milestones, is he sitting at 6 months, is he walking at 1 year, is he talking one word at, and there is it's a Denver developmental screening test sort of really helps you with that. More than that, if we are leaning towards an academic diagnosis, I would be a little wary of it. I would say it's not required, because that's largely a result of impoverished environment rather than anything in the child, the child herself. So that's one thing. About using it on other populations which are non-Anganwadi, I would say you would need to begin with the tool as such first, right? And see what is the sort of response. Are you getting a normal curve in the, if you've tested 50 children, is the performance falling across a normal curve? If it is, which means that the tool is fairly okay even in your context. If it isn't, then that's the sort of data I think which Azim Premji University needs, and I would think if we want to expand the tool to other, populations, or think about it in its various versions, then you would need to collaborate with other organizations, and I think they would be, you would be probably very happy to do that, in that format. So I think the basic has to start with using the tool as it is in toto, seeing the results, and then seeing where is it that we need to change, or where is it that we need to adapt. My sense is that perhaps in the more enriched environments, your assessment of the cognitive domain could perhaps become more complex. Maybe the other domains may not be so different, but maybe your early numeracy and early mathematical reasoning, you would need to have layers of item. Just now there are only 2 levels, so if that is the sort of feedback, you would develop a level 3 and a level 4 and a level 5 and a level 6 to extend it in that sense. None of us here understood what is meant by rigidity of the tool, so we can't really
But we may take another question perhaps, and then come back to you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Saraswati. Thank you so much. Really appreciate what you've brought out. We are from Diagar. We run Montessori preschool and daycare centers for migrant children in Bangalore. My question, we've just got a glimpse of the tool, and we're looking forward to really looking into it more and seeing how we can adapt it and use it. My question is, we work with migrant children, so they come from different parts of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and they come from different parts of the country. And something that we always face is, right, we have all these best laid plans and wonderful lesson plans, and the children go back to their villages, come back, and they've taken a few steps back. Have you seen that since you've done so much? You've worked with so many Anganwadis. Have you seen that? And while you were talking, I was thinking, will some learning not be unlearned when they go back? And so do you have any insight on working with migrant children and how this learning has progressed with them? Thank you.
Maybe the breaks in the inputs that children get, or the Anganwadis that we don't work with, and how do you see that? Her question is on how breaks in inputs that children receive, does it delay, or again, do they forget? Is there a change that you see in their performance in general?
See, because really we are not tested at different points of time. As we administered every year, end of the academic year, but we are continuously working with Anganwadis and Anganwadi children. We see the difference. Suppose if the child is absent for a while, so comparing with the similar child and this child, there is a variance, and sometimes it hampers the child progress also, because the child is somewhere else, this child is there only. So if they don't get any support at home, that's more bad for the child. So even we have some migrant children in urban areas, one of the block we work. So we see the difficulties, different language, children are facing different things also. Even teachers try their best, but they're not able to fill the gap because of the language constraint.
Sorry, the follow-on question is, does your assessment help even for those children?
Yeah, as a tool, it would serve that purpose. Yeah, I think we should be able to assess all children irrespective of the input that they are being given, right? Yeah, if that answers your question.
And we'd
Yeah.
love to try it and give you
Yes,
feedback.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think yeah. Yes, Lata. Yeah, here in the front first. Okay. Maybe yeah. You can ask and I'll share it aloud. Yes. Yes.
Okay, I just needed to make a number of points very quickly. The first is, Rekha, your point about trialing the school readiness after 10 years. And I think that's a very good point, except that I would suggest that you know exactly what you have done with the Child Relief and You program. You would need to do some kind of a comparison between the school readiness tool to see the degree of association, because that was one of the questions I had actually. That, okay, this is a tool that you have tested, but when you look at it in terms of children's results on other tools, how does it work?
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's one.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly
Sure.
go through the second and third. The second point is the one that all of you have said, that it's available, and I think that's a fantastic thing. I mean, if you ask me, having the tool being available and giving people an idea as to what all-round development is very good. But if we are going to ask teachers that, you know, you please do this in your classroom, given the amount of training that you have done for your testers and making sure, I think there is a caveat to this, that you need to make sure that the people who are going to be implementing this tool do go through some kind of training, because otherwise your inter-data reliability is just going to be shot, and you really will not be able to use that as a scientific data for analysis.
That's
Okay?
right. Yeah.
And the third thing is, again, a little bit of a concern that I have is that your tool is available. And I'm not talking here about the ICDS, because I think, you know, there is a level of honesty and thing about the way that they work. But having worked so, and certainly not NGO schools and, you know, elite schools, etc., but I'm talking of the whole slew of affordable private schools that we have got in this state, and the kind of work that, you know, I have sort of heard from them, talked to them, etc. Making a tool like this available gives, you know, throws open this very great fear of coaching, of actually getting children to work and work and work and work on this kind of activity and and exactly like you would do for a entrance
Regular
examination,
assessment,
whether it's an IIT exam or a 10th pass exam, you would be throwing yourself open to this kind of, and I'm not, as I said, I'm not talking of the ICDS because you've got those results. So I think one of the things you need to be very clear about is that this is something that needs to be used at the classroom level for a teacher to know how it is going, and not to be used as a point of comparison, because then you're shot.
Yeah. Thanks for highlighting that concern. And you know, as educators, we will have to be careful. It is not to say my preschool is doing better, or it is to see where the child is and to give us the feedback. I think that's very central to the use, and making it open. In fact, we've had you know, reservations ourselves whether it should be an accessible tool at this scale. And I think one of the hope is that at an institutional level, the hope is that it is not something that people can just use. I think the difficulty involved in the tool in itself helps in that manner. At the same time, in order to do systematic work in the domain, I think we need ideas. We need teachers to know that it's not the yes or the no, is the child able to do or not able to do, but what are the levels at which children function in the classroom. I think as an input to to the early childhood domain of what we require today, and is our hope that people who use it will use it with care, will use it in the way that it is supposed to be used, and not use it loosely to brand and market their own programs and things like that, right? So that's one of the hope that we have, I would think. We are actually running a little bit short of time, and there are several questions at the back. Could we take 2 questions? I think Vajanti here wants to say something. There's somebody here in the middle and at the back. We'll take these 3 questions and respond to all of them together, and then move to our final segment. Yeah.
Yeah. First, let me congratulate the team for doing a wonderful work. Kinnari, I'm again worried and more worried about capacity building of the assistants.
Yeah.
You know, Akshara, way back in 2009-10, we were running in around 3,000 Anganwadis in Bangalore urban. We did develop a very simple tool with around 56, items, right? I guess that is what was taken up by the government. They didn't even get into whys of those items, hows of those items. They just xeroxed it and used it left, right, and center. And it led us nowhere, actually. And we also saw teachers, Anganwadi workers, and fudging the data as well, right? I think we should be very, very mindful and should think more seriously about the strategies of capacity building.
Right.
How do we do it?
Yeah.
And why are we using it, and how are we going to using the results of these, tools and assessments and things like that.
Yeah.
That is point number 1. Point number 2, somewhere in 2013, when we got our Anganwadis assessed by Ambedkar University, the results were really, really pathetic because it was at a scale. We were perfectly fine. But you need to have that courage to say that this is how the results are. Now you need to work with that.
Yeah.
We found it very, very difficult. With the very small scale, we could do wonders. But the moment you get into scale, then there is an issue. Just that I thought I should share our experience with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank
you.
Thanks again for these caveats and concerns. I think all of us who work at scale and work with children, we are concerned about each of these. So we take that. On the training bit, I think what we are also putting together is a demonstration video, right, on how you should look at each of the components in the tool, and that should be available. So while you just read it, it may not make sense, but maybe with the audio visual input that is there, that may give a little more insight into the way you approach the tool and the item itself. MSR, Rekha, Shipra, you want to add anything to this concern? I want to take 2 more questions and then close the, in the center here. Yes, you want to have a follow-up question here at the back?
Hello.
Yes.
So my question is, much is spoken about the way the tool has been tested, or the testing.
Could you be little louder? I think the microphone needs more sound there. Yeah.
Am I audible now? Is it better?
Little louder, perhaps. Yes. Yes, that's better.
So that's better. Okay. So much has talked about the way the testing has been done, the tool has been tested, and the number of children that were tested. But just also want to know about the outcomes of this testing. So when you talk about control group and the experimental group, so any results that were published on the outcomes and how the children fared when we, where this tool was tested? And has any study been done against the private schools where this kind of program has been running? So just to get a comparative analysis of how this tool fares.
Here in the center, yes.
So in continuation with the question that she was asking, I have 2 questions. One is that if we start, as you said, it's available right there, and are there any prerequisites for the one who is conducting the tests, and what is the ratio that you suggest, and practically how many tests can be conducted? Or I have not seen the tool yet, so I don't know the practically what are the issues, right? And the second question is, so after we conduct the test, what after that? So are we going to categorize, or are we going, how is it going, what is the outcome, as she was mentioning, right? And are you going to handhold us after the tests are done?
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Capacity building is an issue. So even the basic assessment, the filling of the card itself is they're not doing it effectively. So we are working at a large scale, full scale at the districts. At least we want to identify the teachers who could do, and they could in turn help the other teachers. That's what we are trying to do. So regarding the private and the Anganwadis, we have not done this kind of assessment in private schools. We thought of it, but we could not do as of now. So for the last 4 years results, as Kinnari mentioned, the initial year, the difference between the control and experimental group was very less. This is about 2019 data I was talking. There was a 12% difference overall, all items put together, but there is a difference in each domain also. So even everyone thought that, okay, socio-emotional is not a big thing and there will be a huge difference. But there is no much difference between the control and experiment. That was a very insightful thing for all of us also. Then we took this kind of information when we are engaging with the teachers, what the things they need to do in the Anganwadi centers. We take the results, we discuss at the district level functionaries, and we discuss certain things at the sector meetings and project meetings, and we use most of it directly in our monthly workshop with the teachers.
Yeah. You want to add? Yes.
I could add to this about the. So we did it. The CRY study was across 3 different types of preschool experiences, and the study studied the curriculum in the different schools, the way it was done using the EC course, and the children's outcomes. And the children's outcomes are clearly related with the curriculum. So when children are free for a lot amount of time, there is really no activity, or a large chunk of the language activity is only devoted to singing songs or hearing stories, then children's outcomes are not favorable. Because some of the items on cognition and early literacy, which you would be testing through the tool, are not something which would just develop naturally when children are playing. They require an intervention. And if the intervention is lacking, then those competencies are not going to develop. So there is a very clear relation between the curriculum that is provided and the competencies of children that are evident. This does not mean that the curriculum of the schools where children are performing better is good in toto. That's not what it should be taken to mean.
Yeah.
There is caveats over there also. But what you can deduce is that on certain tests of early numeracy and early literacy, children will not be able to perform up to the level required for entry into grade 1 unless there is structured, pinpointed activities in a developmentally appropriate manner to do that. Just singing some songs, just singing some rhymes is not going to lead up to that.
Yeah. Yes, Shipra. Yeah.
So just regarding, I was thinking the concern regarding the, it made it to be publicly available. I think the tool is not a certifying tool that way. We're not certifying, so it's not there that the school would be certified or children would be certified. So that has to be
important.
like bold,
underline. It's not a screening
bold,
tool. It's not a certifying tool.
It has to be put in bold. And if to also sort of counter that, if we could screen, we get that information before making it available at the click of a button. If there is a one level of screening process of who is asking for it and for what purpose, then only it's available. It's not like I already can download it.
That we've in fact
at our level
installed it. Yes.
When the numbers or whatever the requirements increase, we'll see. But probably to start with, that may be useful process.
Yeah, so we'll take this tension back with us and see what we can do in order that the tool is used in an appropriate manner and not just for testing children and understanding how we are doing or labeling children and things like that. This side has been reasonably quiet, but I think you have a lot of food for thought to take back. I would request Uma Mahadevan ma'am, and we would like to thank all three of you to be here. I think it's been a very insightful discussion on assessment. I think all inputs we give to children, we finally want to know whether our inputs have reached. Thank you, Shipra, MSR, and Rekha. It's, I think, just a new beginning for all the work that we've done since 2014, as far as the tool is concerned. Yes. I invite Uma Mahadevan Das Gupta, she's the Additional Chief Secretary, for comments on the tool, on the significance of large-scale assessment. I think she needs no introduction. She writes in popular media. She's very passionate about early childhood education and the concern for the young child. It's been a long journey with you, ma'am, and a pleasure having you here. We look forward to your thoughts here. Yes.
Thank you. And at the outset, I must say what a pleasure it is to be at the new campus of the Azim Premji University. Congratulations to all of you. It's a beautiful campus, and I look forward to, unfortunately, I don't have the time today to go around, but I look forward to going around the campus as it comes up. Very, very beautiful and very large. Nice to see that there's a lot of student presence and a nice exhibition space outside. Congratulations also to the team that has been working on this early learner assessment. Kinnari, others, Shipra, Rekha, others, all of you who have worked on this, MSR. I visited Sangareddy, I think it was in 2016, soon after I joined to lead the Women and Child Development Department, and I was there for, I think, 2 days in Hyderabad. The first day we had a meeting, and then the second day we had visits. It was a fabulous visit. So I'm really glad to see, I was quite envious that it was in Sangareddy and not in Karnataka. Really glad to see that it has grown from 45 to 1,500, and certainly will grow from strength to strength. Also glad to see that the work there has resulted in a lot of good outcomes. Today's outcome being the early learner assessment, which I was going through. Handbook for development assessment of children 3 to 5 years. I must say at the outset that, and thank you to the audience for asking some of the questions that I had. I must say at the outset that assessment, we can all agree, is a double-edged thing. It's got many positives, it's got many negatives. Assessment in today's context, where there's so much competition everywhere around us. Competition to get into universities, to get into colleges, to get into preschools and nurseries. My own children, more than a decade and a half ago, we were in Bombay, and we had to register them for admissions in a particular school. Very peculiar instructions. After the child is born, but before the child turns 1, you register, and you pay a certain fee, and you pay for, a postcard that comes to you after the child turns 3 years, 10 months. At the time when the child turns 3 years, 10 months, they'll send you a postcard 1 month before the date when the admissions interview will happen, okay? And at that time, they'll give your child a 1-page sheet, which is like a syllabus, which is a list of, I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about, 8 different skills. And the day of the admissions interview, the child has to walk around. The parents sit in a different room, and the child has to walk around from table to table, okay, being tested on each of these things. Yeah, it's as egregious and as pressurizing as that. There were children with tears flowing down their cheeks. There were parents with tears flowing down their cheeks. There were parents telling children, be strong in your heart, don't worry. Yeah. So, after 15, 16 years, it's possible for us to laugh about it, but I must say I'm very grateful for some fabulous schools in Bangalore and for the fact that we were able to shift and get school admissions without any difficulty. But assessment, again, coming back to this word, it puts pressure. It puts pressure on parents. Parents, in turn, put pressure on the kids. Parents put pressure on teachers. The fact that we're going to get assessed puts pressure on teachers and on schools and on school leaders. It puts pressure on early educators. And therefore, that's the context in which we should be talking about assessment. We should know that there are so many things to be cautious about when we're talking about assessment. We also saw that a very finely detailed tool like this, with many rubrics, field tested, with different levels, stages of development, can be problematic in the hands of somebody who has not been trained effectively. And therefore, assessment goes hand in hand. Shipra did say that it goes hand in hand with learning. I would add that it also goes hand in hand with training for the person, not only for the person who's going to use that assessing tool or perform that assessment, but for the teachers to whom this assessment is going to be shared with and who need to do something about getting children along the journey. Because at the back of all this, the approach is, again, very fundamental. Every child can learn. Every child learns at their own pace. What can we do to enable? What can we do to identify? You talked about the zone of proximal development. What can we do to help them along? What can we do to scaffold their learning from point to point so that they are learning well and around all domains? Those are the things that a tool for assessment needs to help us with. And yet, we need, I'm talking as an administrator, so I'm going to add another layer of caution over here. We need a diagnostic tool to tell us whether our systems are working well or not. Diagnostic not in the sense of diagnosing an SLD in a child, but in diagnosing whether we have systemic issues which need to be corrected. And therefore, large-scale assessments are very important for administrators like me to see how well we're doing, how well our systems are doing, and what we need to change. But how do we position all of that into this context? Because a tool like this, which is a very fine and very precise instrument, can become a blunt instrument in the hands of in the hands of communities where it's being used in an unthinking way, or in a way which will result in the labeling of a child. This child is at stage number 3. That child is at 5. Both are the same age. You've already labeled the child, right? And therefore, those are things that we should really think about very deeply. I should also say that the Anganwadi context, because we talked about impoverished environments, the Anganwadi context is the largest early learning context in India. 1.3 to 1.4 million Anganwadis across the country. Something like 2.8 million Anganwadi teachers and helpers. And again, the Anganwadi context itself is not one monolithic context. We've got Anganwadis in different stages, in different conditions across the country. Some of them working for 4 hours, some of them working for 6.5 hours, some of them still working with take-home rations, some of them providing not only hot meals, but also hot milk, eggs, various other services, services to mothers, services to pregnant women, and so on. And the ICDS itself, even without any state interventions, the ICDS itself has 6 different areas of services. It's the Integrated Child Development Services. It's not just one scheme. So all of that needs to be kept in mind. ECE also happens within and embedded within, and this is something that Sanjay Kaul and I wrote very clearly in the task force report that was submitted to the Ministry of Women and Child Development and Government of India, that ECE has to happen Anganwadi children need to be given quality ECE, but that happens within a context where you have to also deliver on nutrition. If you have more than 30% stunting, then in your country, then you need to also deliver on nutrition. You need to deliver on health. You need to deliver on, so an Anganwadi MSR will have to continue to be a feeding center and a immunization center and a center for nutrition education and a center for early education. It's also, as in Karnataka and many other states, a partial daycare. 6.5 hours, the women can leave the children here. They are safe, their well-being is taken care of, and they can go out to work, rural. So all of these things are part of our context. And we need to recognize that the Anganwadi teacher is not doing any one thing. And we need to recognize the multiple burdens on her time and how we can make it easier. Keeping that in mind, areas where we should, another thing that we should keep in mind is that what gets measured gets done, unfortunately, in the government situation. What doesn't get measured is often forgotten, right? And that is as true of anything else as of our tool as well as anything else. So, striking a note of caution again, I would also say that aspects such as gender inclusion and disability also need to be kept in mind. Of course, SLD, diagnosis, screening, all of that may come later. But the fact is that different children have different needs within the same context, and therefore even something as small but as fundamental as putting a girl child along there, as well as a child who's visibly having a disability, will help to remind us that there are different children with different needs inside that early learning setting. There are also children, vast majority of our children in Anganwadis are going to be some form of first-generation learners. Their parents may be either illiterate or semi-literate, and that's something to keep in mind. Vast majority of children in destination states for migration are going to be children of migrants in many, many districts. There are going to be children with, we know, the nutritional status, severely or moderately malnourished. There are going to be children with different dialects. So all of these also are things to keep in mind as we set out to do this. I'd also like to ask a couple of questions and, about this problem that I always have with words like preschool and school readiness. I know that there are very specific terms and a very specific context and meanings that they have, but I still feel that used narrowly and without deep understanding and without the contextualization, it's possible for laypersons, a layperson meaning the ordinary reader who's reading a newspaper or the popular media, to look at preschool as just something which prepares a child for school. Taking a unique child and cutting them into a shape which fits the pegs of school. School readiness, again, the same thing. One can always ask, shouldn't schools be ready to accept a child, whichever way they are, in standard 1? That's also a question to think about. So assessment is something which should not regard perhaps the learning journey as a straight line, but should accept that children's learning journeys happen at different paces, different speeds, and have ways of meandering. A child may come with their migrant parents to a particular state and may go back and may not learn that particular thing or may forget those particular things that they have learned, but certainly they would be learning other things. And maybe we should find a way to recognize and valorize other forms of learning and other ways of learning. And that's also something to think about and to introspect about. Just a couple of points. Rekha ji very nicely talked about the questions and the need for sensitivity in developing the questions. I would still say in creative development, I would still ask whether अगर तुम्हें भूख लगी है और मम्मी घर पर नहीं है तो क्या करोगे? This obviously is different from घर पे ताला लगा है. But again, मम्मी घर पे नहीं है is again runs the risk of stereotyping. So maybe we could think of asking a question in a different way, or think of questions which explore the creative development domain without running the risk of stereotyping. Though I do understand that political correctness as well as recognizing local realities. We have to maintain a balance. The other thing is, the next question is also a bit triggering, and I would request some amount of thinking about it. You know, आपके पास रहने के लिए घर नहीं होगा तो क्या करोगे? So this can be triggering. This can be triggering, for example, in slums where houses have been razed to the ground, and therefore we need to think of other ways. So I would suggest, I think it's a wonderful exercise in developing and addressing the needs of creative development of children. But I would suggest further work on this. I would also suggest that, it's just a suggestion, it's something to talk about and think about. In this tool, the language is all in English, but the questions come, पहले कौन सा card आएगा, फिर उसके बाद कौन सा card आएगा. So I'm just wondering why that language choice was made. Why not keep the whole thing in English and then translate it into different languages? Because I'm not able to put my finger on what, it gives me a sense of discomfort. Who is addressing whom, right? And maybe that needs to be explored a little bit. It's just something that I thought about. But these are just, minor issues in discussing what has been a tremendous journey. I would once again congratulate Azim Premji University, the entire team which has worked on this, the teachers, the early educators, the Anganwadi teachers, everybody who has put in their heart and soul into this, and the children who have contributed with their answering of the questions. I think it's wonderful that we are developing, the Global South has to develop answers for the Global South. We can't be looking at expensive tools from outside our context. And so this contributes to that. Look forward to ways in which we can help from the government side to take it further. And I wish the entire team all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma ma'am, for your insights as well as the need for us to go back many questions. I think the session in general has given us a lot more food for thought for ourselves. I think at the end, it is the responsibility that we carry as educators, as early educators. I think while we're making the tool accessible, available, I think we will have to use it with caution. I think that's the underlying point that all of us drive home from here. I invite now Dr. Ankur Madan, the Director of School of Education, for vote of thanks and what happens next. We saw a whole group of students, our in-service teachers who were here, leave when you were speaking for their sessions, post-lunch. So, yeah, thank you, Ankur.
Thank you, Kinnari. Good afternoon, everyone. As we come to the close of this wonderful session, it's my happy duty to deliver the vote of thanks. I'll begin by thanking our esteemed guests. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being here today. A big shout out to the participants, to all the organizations, partners, members from different organizations who are here, members from the foundation, teachers, and of course our students. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. The panel discussion I thought was very, very engrossing and enriching. All of us are left with lots and lots of questions and insights. Thank you very much for this participation. Also a shout out for all the audience that are connected to us right now virtually. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you enjoyed the session as well. This event, of course, would not have been possible without the contribution of so many people who have been working tirelessly to make it happen, not just to bring this tool to the stage that we were able to launch it today, but also to make this event a success. So I would like to just name a few people. There are many others who work backstage and at the back end. Special thanks to our communications team. Thank you all very, very much for doing so much of work in terms of printing the tool, the audiovisual communication, the fantastic video that we all saw together.
here. A special thanks to our coordination team, that is Sudha Hariharan, Sophia, Manorama, Jayashri, Tamra Lipta, our IMF team, which is really the backbone of organizing everything that we are able to manage on this campus. And a big shout out to all our student volunteers from across programs and schools. Thank you guys. Your help is invaluable. We come to the end of the formal part of today's events. I invite all of you to join us for lunch. The lunch is at the Welcome Center. Our student volunteers will help you navigate and find the Welcome Center. After that is over, at 2 o'clock, we are hoping to regroup here. There are several things that are planned. Those of you who came in early may have been able to see that there are lots and lots of stalls put outside. I really hope that you can find the time to go around. We also would encourage you to take a tour of the university campus in case you are visiting for the first time, or even if you've been here before. There is a Kannada EC seminar that we are having in August. There is a stall outside from where you can gather more information about it. There are also several other events that are happening around early childhood education. We are a very vibrant campus, and we would like you to participate and also understand what we do around in ECE. Our students from MA Education program, particularly those who are ECE students, have put up stalls and an exhibition. I would really be, it'll make them very happy if you went around and saw that exhibition. There is also a demo of the tool, the ELA tool. I think it will, all of you are intrigued and interested. It would help if you could watch that demo. There is also the Jadui Pitara that I think all of us have now heard about. It is on display outside. There is lots and lots of work that our Sangareddy team, the Telangana Sangareddy team, has done. There are stalls outside as an exhibition to showcase that piece of work. So when we regroup here, I would encourage you all to go around and see that. But for now, let's all eat. Please join us for lunch, and thank you all very, very much for being here today, and thank you, Kinnari, for putting this all together. Thank you. Yeah, so our student volunteers can show you the way to the Welcome Center. It's not very far from here. It's a nice, pleasant walk. Please do join us, all of you, for lunch. Thank you.
We walk towards the exit, and you will see a not a very tall building. Yeah, it's a zigzag building. That's the Welcome Center. That's where we are all having lunch. This entire group here. Yeah. Thank you, and see you all back at 2 p.m. in our corridor here. Yes. There are shuttles for those of you who would like to take a shuttle to the last mile, as in the Sarjapura police station. You should check with our security to when the shuttle is leaving, and the shuttle will be there to drop you there. Yeah. Thank you once again, everyone. Thank you to our virtual audience as well. We respond to your questions online. Thank you.